Okay, well, welcome back to the garage, everyone. We're here with my 2023 Honda CRF300LS, and many of you have been asking for this video. It's finally here. I am going to spend the next few minutes walking around the bike and telling you all about all of the accessories I've put on it, the specifics of those accessories, as well as any sort of subtle hacks or modifications I've made to the new bike to essentially make it my own, make it unique, make it special for me. Now, you'll definitely learn that some of these accessories gave me a little bit of trouble, and I ended up swapping out different models or different styles until I finally arrived at a configuration that I'm happy with. So without any more boring narrative, what I've done is I've put sticky notes on here. I'm just gonna go around and pick off sticky notes and tell you about all the accessories and mods. So let's get to it up front here, starting with the handlebars. Okay, first things first, up front, we got the handguards. These are the Zeta XCs with the Pro shields, so the slightly bigger shields. I bought this as a kit. It came with the smaller shields, so I did spend a little extra money to get these bigger ones. Now, initially, I was gonna put the Barkbuster Storms on, the same ones I have on the Himalayan, but I liked the way these fit better. Now, there are a few things I will say as far as fitment. The first is that I like how these bars connect in to the handlebar. They actually clamp on onto the lower part of the factory bar, which means I have room up here on the top for my quad lock and for other accessories. It also just barely fits the factory levers, so there's like a tiny little bit of space in there where it does not actually touch the bar, so it's a very tight tolerance. And then over here, if you're curious how I actually connected them to the bar, I know there's a lot of ways to do this. I literally just screwed these right into the existing bar and weight. But for now, this is a perfect solution for me, considering that at some point I'm probably gonna put different bars on the bike. Next up, we have the mirrors. These are the DoubleTake adventure style mirrors. I looked at the enduro style, considering this is kind of more of a dual sport, but I have these on the Himalayan and I like them. I like their field of view. Why mess with a good thing? All right, so coming around to the instrument cluster area in the cockpit, we got a lot going on. So I'm just gonna try and step through these quickly. Obviously, I've got a quad lock over here. This is taken right from the Trail 125. It's used to mount my phone. Up here, the reason I've got a sticky note on the cluster itself is because I actually installed a screen protector over the instrument cluster, and I did this because this instrument cluster has the appearance of being easily scratchable, and so I found this company, Speedo Angels, that makes these little iPhone-style screen protectors, and I just put a sticky over the dash cluster here to protect it from scratches or damage. Moving over to here, this is just to show I've got my GoPro mount, and then in the middle here, I installed a handlebar bag from Moto. This is a really nice place to store some simple things that I want to bring with me on a ride, and it's easily detachable. So I just like that I have this little bag, this little bit of storage here that's not a tank bag. And then behind it, you might not be able to see, but I've got a sticky note here because what I've got here is a power adapter. Now it's tucked away nicely under the handlebar, so it's very hard to see. Now the reason that I went with this plug instead of sort of the factory Honda USB plug that connects up by the handlebar and has that kind of cigarette lighter style is that this is what I've got on the Himalayan and I really like it. It has two USB ports, it has a power switch, but also what I like is that Honda has a accessory plug behind the headlight. Now, SRC Moto sells a accessory plug cable that's a standard cable that simply terminates in two open wires. And so you can buy that and then patch it right in to this style of USB charger. Now the reason I bring all this up is because if you plug into the accessory port, it's wired to only be hot when the bike is on. So if I come down here, unlike the Himalayan, if I try to power this on right now, nothing happens. But if I turn the bike on, and then I push it, boom, I've got power. And let's say I get off the bike and I forget to turn it off, it goes off when I turn the bike off. So it's just an extra level of sort of redundancy and checking so that I don't accidentally drain the battery. And I really like that about Honda. And I like that it's mounted on the handlebars instead of taking up valuable real estate up here where I would mount other things. Sticky note here is simply to denote that I put in my own SAE plug up to the battery, and I guess the one thing I would say about that is I never particularly like how dealerships wire these. They always come out in some awkward place, and the battery is right here behind this panel, and there's very little space in there, and I know that they had wired it kind of down in the front, causing this panel to distend out a little bit. So basically I rerouted it and did some cable management in there and just cleaned it up nicely so that now I have a nice plug right here and I can tuck it away when I'm riding and pull it out when I need to put it on the battery tender. So moving down to the toolbox, let's scooch down here. This bike does come with a pretty nice toolbox, as you can see right here. What I've got going on in here is pretty simple. I've got a small toolkit here. This is the same toolkit that I had in the Trail 125. It's got a series of spanners and pliers and various different small screwdrivers and tools and things. I also have my registration down here on the bottom in a Ziploc bag. I've got a small baggie of fuses Velcroed to the bottom as well. And then also back in here, I've got a small little tin Velcroed in, and I've basically got some first aid kit supplies in there. So just kind of like a little pocket travel first aid kit, which I think is a nice little place to put it. I did forget to mention the side stand, so I did put on a side stand extender. This is from SRC Moto. Just gives the side stand a little bit wider of a footprint. However, it's still kind of short. And so as you can see, I've got this little wood block that I carry with me. So we're moving back up the bike, still on the right side, but I've got a sticky note on the seat just to denote that I did take off that strap that comes standard on the Honda seat. I still have it, and you know, it's fine. It's just that anytime you go to scooch back on the seat, it's kind of annoying and it's in the way. But it does leave this sort of permanent imprint on the seat, so that is a little bit of an annoyance. All right, now coming back here, you might see that I've got a nano tool tube connected to the bike. And honestly, I'm not sure if I'm gonna keep this. You know, I really like the tool tubes on the Himalayan. I use them to store my toolkit and also a fuel canister or other supplies, but this nano tube is kind of small. It would be good for documents or maybe some tire irons or things like that. But you'll see that I've got a different solution for my tire change kit. So not sure if I'm gonna leave this on, but this is a really good place for it. I like it here. It doesn't go anywhere. You can just mount it with zip ties. It works perfectly fine. And it is a nice place to store some extra things if you need a space for it. So let's move on to the back, where there's a lot going on here with my back rack and my storage solution. So I really want to spend a little bit of time talking about what we've got going on here. Okay, so I've got a rear rack on this bike, which you guys have all seen in the videos. And on top of the rack, I've got this Moto bag. Great solution. Here's the kicker though. This was not the rack that I initially put on the bike. In fact, this is the third rack that I've put on this bike. I've kind of gone through this saga trying to find the perfect rack. So let me explain. This was the first rack that I put on the bike. Now this is made by Outback Motor Tech. Fantastic rack. It's super sturdy, super robust, very heavy, 5 or 6 millimeter thick aluminum. It's a tank and it's awesome. However, this is where it connects to the bike with these two spots here in the front. And these, I found, because of the way it mounts to the bike, it makes it next to impossible to ever take your seat off. You have to completely disassemble the rack in order to be able to get out the bolts to lift the back end of your seat. And I just didn't like that. I don't necessarily plan on going under my seat a lot, but I want the ability to take my seat off without spending 40 minutes disassembling a rack. So after I decided to get rid of this rack, which I'm probably gonna sell now on eBay or something, I decided to go with a different rack, and let me show you that one. So the next rack I bought was this guy. This is the Rally Raid, and it's super nice. It's small, it's sleek, and it kind of shapes itself to the CRF, so I really thought this was gonna be it. Also has the pre-drilled holes for rotopacks. Love it. Put it on the bike, and it was way too small to like put any effective luggage on. I tried to put this bag on this rack, and it just kind of like waddled back and forth no matter how tight I put it, just because it's not enough of a base to actually use as an effective rack. So what I ultimately ended up with was the rack I have on here now. It's made by T-Rex Racing. Now this is kind of the perfect middle ground. It's a little bit wider, a nice footprint, but it's still sleek in its design, and it connects, you'll see if I come in here, it connects to the bike using these removable bolt pieces, and actually these might even be the pieces that came with the Rally Raid. But my point is that if I take this bolt out here, this little piece pops out and I can just lift the rack and take the seat off. So it's so much better of a solution for connecting a rack to the bike as opposed to the Outback Motor Tech. And again, I love Outback Motor Tech. I got my crash bars from them. They're a great company. I just did not like the way it connected. The other thing that I like about this rack is that it comes pre-drilled with holes, which is good and bad. Let me show you what I mean. So you may notice there are 1, 2, 3, 4 pre-drilled holes, okay? Now these holes are pre-drilled to accommodate a GV top box or something. I don't know. The nice thing is it allows me to put on my milk crate. So I have these perfectly drilled holes if I want to put my milk crate on here. That's great. However, they are not the perfect distance in order to mount a Rotopax. And so if you look, there's also these 2 middle holes, which I drilled myself just using a hand drill, and those are drilled at the right distance for a Rotopax. So let me show you now what I can do with this rack and why ultimately this is my favorite solution. So you saw the bag on there. This is my bag, it fits nice, great solution. Let me show you what it looks like with the Rotopax on there. All right, so I've got a 1-gallon Rotopax here. I've got my mounting bracket. This mounts right here on the rack, and if I put the Rotopax on, spout away from the exhaust, of course, basically it fits on just like that. I mean, that is a perfect fit. You can see it fits basically just up to the edge of the rack over here. It fits up just to the back of the rack here and fits up just to the edge of the rack there, and also right up to the edge of the rack here. So everything about this rack is sort of made for a 1-gallon Rotopax. The additional thing is that because of the way this fits, I can mount my bag right on top of it. I mean, that's perfect, right? It's like creates a perfect platform now for my bag. So it's just an awesome solution. Last but not least, if I am feeling a little nostalgic for the Honda Trail 125, I can also easily mount my milk crate to this rack because of those pre-drilled holes. I still have my license plate here with the holes in it. I still have my screws with the washers, so I can basically just mount this right down to those M6 pre-drilled holes, which is fantastic. This is, I think, probably the best rack out there, in my opinion, for the CRF300L, and I say that because I've tried 3 different racks, and this is the one that came out on top. So, now that we're done with the rack, let's move on. All right, we're down on the right side of the bike now. I've got a sticky note here because I did put on a rear master cylinder guard. Why? I didn't really need it. I don't know, it was 20 bucks. I thought it looked cool. So not really necessary, but cosmetically cool. I did put a skid plate on the bike. This is the SRC Moto skid plate. Now there are a ton of skid plates out there. Now a lot of people use the plastic Acherbys skid plate or the Moose Racing one or whatever. I prefer metal, just like I do with my rear racks. I just like the aluminum over the plastic, especially here in Arizona where we got a ton of rocks. And so I like this one. This rack also went on very easily, only took me about 20 minutes. It's perfectly adequate. I like it. I have no complaints. So I did put on a Radiator Guard. This is also SRC Moto. Now this was not the first Radiator Guard I put on. I actually put on this super beefy one, and I can't even remember the name. I think it was like Flatland Racing or something, and it actually wrapped around and connected into the frame, but it was so big and bulky. So this guard I think is a better fit. It looks better. It still offers a ton of good protection, and it's kind of like the perfect middle ground for me. So next up, and probably one of the most important accessories I've put on the bike, is actually the crash bars here. Now, there's not a lot of companies that make crash bars for the CRF300L. There's a few. T-Rex Racing does, SRC does. These are Outback Motor Tank, and I like these because I thought that they were sort of the perfect balance between sort of small and discreet, but also incredibly sturdy and not too heavy. And so these mount obviously right here, and this is basically the spot that sticks out the most on the bike. So if I'm gonna drop the bike, it's gonna fall on this and on the handlebars. And so now I've got this really fantastic protection here. And as you can see, there's a strut bar that goes through to the other side. Now, one cautionary tale, and the reason I have a sticky note on the front fender is because when I put this on, the first thing I noticed was I had no space between the back of the fender and this bar. In fact, it was actually rubbing. Now, the reason that I don't think this fit upon install was because technically this crash bar was designed for the CRF300L, not the LS. Now, the LS has a shorter suspension, so I think the dimensions are just slightly off. And so the easy fix, the easy way that I solved this problem to give me this 1 centimeter of clearance here was when I mounted this fender back on, I just added 2 thin washers to the back screws, so it basically just barely distends the fender slightly forward and slightly up. So the fender is probably about 2 degrees higher than it was when it came from the factory, which then pulls this away from the bottom. So it's a little bit of a hack. Now there are a couple of things that I did buy that I haven't decided if I'm actually gonna put on the bike yet. The first is I bought some new foot pegs. These are the DRC foot pegs, and these are a little bit wider and a little bit grippier than the standard factory pegs. So I'll probably put these on. They weren't very expensive and they seem like a nice compromise to get a little bit more of a platform for the adventure riding. So that's gonna be going on the bike at some point. And then also I did buy a windshield. So this is also T-Rex Racing. I'm getting it into position here, so it basically fits just like that. So it's a really nice windscreen that I'm sure helps buffet some of that annoying wind when you're riding down the highway, but I just don't know if I actually want to use it or not. I haven't decided if I want that wind protection, but I have it and I'm going to keep it, and I'm going to decide after I ride the bike a little bit longer. I have nothing else in my shopping cart, as it were, and it's probably a good thing because I did probably spend sort of in the $600 to $800 range probably on all this stuff, and that's not including the stuff that I still have to send back that I ended up not using. I do have a few other things here on the table that I want to talk about that I picked up for the bike. The first is that I did get the official Honda service manual so that I know when I go to do my first oil change and things that I know what I'm doing, so to speak. Speaking of oil changes, I did also pick up a gold plug, which I will put in as soon as I do my first oil change here in the next couple weeks. I have an extra one of those screen protectors as well. I did buy one other accessory that I forgot to mention. So I have a heavier duty spring for the side stand, which I need to put on. I've got the little tool here. This came from Rally Raid. I ordered this when I ordered the rack. It was like 10 bucks. But because I put that side stand extender on my side stand, it makes it a little heavier, and so sometimes when I'm going over really bumpy stuff, I can hear my side stand kind of like clanking around, like it doesn't have enough tension on it, and so this is supposed to increase the tension on the side stand, and so we'll see about putting that on at some point. I did get a new helmet, finally, which you can see here. I got it because my little crappy commuter helmet died. It just like broke, full on broke. And so I got this one because it matches the color scheme, and it was a cheap, relatively cheap, just all around town helmet. And yeah, it's really nice. I like it. It even has one of those little sun shields that comes down. So the last thing I want to talk about is changing tires. Now the CRF doesn't come with any real substantial toolkit. So I do have that toolkit in there, but it's way too small to carry tire changing equipment. So initially I bought this tool, which you can see, I forget where I bought this, but like this is what you need basically. Like you've got this for the rear axle, this for the front axle, and also this for the front axle, because there's secondary bolts that you need to remove with this. So this is kind of like an all-in-one tool, but you can see it's very small and like doesn't have good leverage. So what I did was I picked up this small kit. Now, I was surprised at how small these are. These tiny little bags, right? This is like super small. You can see they fit in my hand. This is from a company called Eastbound. I don't remember where I heard from these guys, but what's cool is they make a specific kit just for the CRF300L, and it comes with both tire spoons, but also with all the tools you need, and all of it you can break down into smaller parts. So you got all these little like super lightweight aluminum tools, you put it all together like this, and now I've got a tire spoon, right? Perfectly good, super robust, heavy duty aluminum, which is nice. And then you can tear it all down and you're good to go. Now in this baggie, I've got all the tools that I need. There's my rear axle, there's my rear axle as well. I've got this attachment for the front. So it's just everything I need to change my tires is in these two little pouches, which I think is a fantastic solution. Of course, there is a downside to this fantastic solution, and that is the price. I can't remember what I paid for these, but I had to get them from Europe. And I wanna say it was, 130 bucks or something, so not cheap. But having these two little pouches that I can just throw in my bag along with my tools and a basic survival kit, first aid kit and things is just so fantastic. So I think that is everything. Thank you for sticking around to the end. I know that was a lot of information to absorb, and if I forgot to talk about anything that you saw on the bike, just ping me in the comments. I guess there is one other thing I forgot to mention that I did buy for the bike, and that is a stand, a lift, because obviously there's no center stand for the bike, and so when I go to change the oil and do other maintenance on the bike, I need to use the lift. So that's a new thing for me. All right, guys, well, that is it. I'm gonna sign off. Thank you so much for following along. Please let me know if you have any questions, but that's it. That's all the accessories, mods, and hacks. So take care, be safe. I'll see you in the next video. Bye. So something that I did forget to mention was the handlebars. In my first impressions video, I talked about the twitchy throttle. So I've been thinking about how I might resolve that if I want to do an ECU update or something else. And what I decided is that sometime next year, my big project will be to replace the entire handlebar. And by doing that, not only will I get a little bit more rise out of the handlebar and get a stronger handlebar, but I'll also be able to put on the handguards in a better, more robust way. But also, and most importantly, put on a new throttle tamer throttle tube. And that whole combination, I'm just going to do it once as one big project next year, and that should take care of kind of the whole handlebar situation. So I did want to mention that before I stop this video. See you guys.